AITJ for cutting my SIL out of my life, even if it upsets the family norms? Throwaway account. The cast, myself, 25, and my husband Tom, 27, his brother Fern, 30, his sister Margaret, 40, and her husband Corey, 37, their dad and their stepmom. This is going to be super long, so I apologize in advance, but there really is so much to get through. I married into the family about a year ago. They are all a pretty tight-knit bunch, but have been exceedingly welcoming and accepting towards me. It took a while for me to warm up because I'm always hesitant around new people, but I actually have a lot of fun with them and they have gone out of their way to make me feel like part of the family. I discovered early on that my husband's family has a unique way of handling conflict, and it's in sharp contrast to the way my own family handles disagreements. My family confronts issues head-on, sometimes ending in screaming matches if it gets heated enough, and all of us tend to speak up when something is bothering us or is fundamentally hurtful to someone. Tom's family is the opposite. They rarely address anything in real time, if at all. They typically whisper about it behind each other's backs, and usually just sit in tension for extended periods of time. It's been made clear to me that the only person in his family that is directly allowed to address an issue is their dad. Everyone else follows suit. This means if he isn't saying anything, no one else does, period. The issue in all of this? My husband's sister, Margaret. I'll give you a little bit of background. She has 4 kids with her husband Corey, and they have a really odd dynamic between the two of them. Margaret is the more domineering of the two, often speaking for the both of them while Corey just sort of sits there and nods along. Margaret is really prone to emotional outbursts over things that simply do not make any sense. There are so many instances of the chaos that Margaret has caused within the family that it would take an eternity to describe them all. I do have some notable ones though, repeatedly guilting people if they don't immediately drop everything to watch her 4 kids, screaming at the top of her lungs / causing a huge scene when there was tomatoes on her salad during a birthday party, regular complaining that no one helps her with anything. Her apartment, car, and kids have been almost exclusively funded by the rest of the family without any expectation of being paid back, and trash-talking her entire family publicly on social media. On a regular basis. Not once has anyone ever addressed these things with her, and it's continued to escalate over time. The biggest issue right now is the rift between Margaret and the stepmom, and how that is affecting the entire family, myself included. Stepmom married into the family about 4 years ago and is one of the kindest people I have ever met, point blank, period. Margaret publicly shames her at every family function and seems to specifically reach for the cruelest things you could say / do to someone. Margaret regularly asks stepmom to babysit, but freaks out when stepmom says no to any of her children. Margaret insists that this is toxic and abusive parenting. Stepmom can't have children, and Margaret has told her that she's thankful for this because it was God doing the world a favor. She's told stepmom that she was the reason her cousin K** led herself. She refuses to acknowledge her as a matriarchal figure and regularly says things like, "This is my dad's house, not yours. I'm not your daughter, you'd never be fit to be a mom, and IDK why my dad even married you." Margaret has gone as far as to compare stepmom to their dad's ex-wife, who stabbed him and ended up in prison. Stepmom has reached out multiple times to try and rectify / make peace with the situation, but Margaret escalates every time she does. All of this is so absurd for a woman of her age that I can't stand it. I have kept my mouth shut for years at this point out of respect for the family norms even through all of this, but last week I decided I'd had enough. Fern called me in tears to tell me that Margaret had ruined a dinner they went to that night, again. Margaret has regularly used Fern as an emotional punching bag, and him calling me in tears is a regular occurrence at this point. At dinner, Margaret had called him fat and told him she didn't want her kids around him anymore because they would think being fat is okay. For context, Fern has struggled with an eating disorder for most of his life. On the phone call, Fern basically spilled his guts. There's a family vacation to Italy every few years and apparently stepmom isn't going anymore because of Margaret. Fern also let me know that there has been talk of cutting Margaret out of the family for years, but their dad hasn't even started the conversation of this isn't okay yet, so none of them can say anything. Fern had tried to contact the husband, Corey, to see if there was something going on, but Corey refused to talk. I have always been friendly with Corey, he's a nice guy, and if you can get to him without Margaret in the room, he's actually really full of life and fun, so I called him myself. Corey told me that everyone is being so mean to Margaret and she's trying to break generational cycles. It sounded like he had a script in front of him the whole time and was almost word for word the same nonsense that Margaret says all the time. Margaret is a victim, everyone else is crazy, no one understands her. Etc. etc. After listening to him for a while, I told him I cared about him but that I was done with Margaret's BS. I blocked their numbers, their social media, and eliminated any other ways they had to contact me. This is a big no-no in this family. You don't confront it, you don't say anything, you just sit there and take it. I contacted Fern and stepmom and told them about my decision, and let them know that I wasn't going to show up to anything if Margaret was also going to be there. I told Tom and we had a whole conversation about it. Everyone is telling me they support me in my decision, but they have all also said some variation of I wish I could do that because I am in the same boat. The subsequent backlash from all of this is that although I am maintaining relationships with the rest of the family, Margaret is even worse at functions now. I don't have to see it, but I hear about it all the time and am starting to wonder if I made the wrong decision. I didn't want to make it worse for anyone, but I just couldn't watch it happen anymore without escalating things, myself. It really was getting to a point where I felt so stifled that I thought I might hit her out of frustration, which is why I chose to back out after all of this. The family still hasn't said anything to her, and my husband told me that they all have a role to play, but that I also kind of disrespected his dad by saying/doing this. Am I the jerk? TLDR. My SIL plays the victim a lot but is actually the aggressor most of the time, and I chose to end all contact, which is upsetting the rest of the family.